Welcome to The Human Element, presented by Whisk. I'm your host, Barb Biden, and in each episode, I sit down with CHROs and senior HR leaders to explore how AI, innovation, and human insight are reshaping the future of HR. We'll explore how technology is reshaping leadership, strategy, and the role of HR by sharing candid stories, practical ideas, and strategic perspectives to help you shape the future. The Human Element is brought to you by Whisk, the leader in agentic HR and creator of Harper, the world's first AI HR generalist. Learn how Harper can resolve up to 80% of routine HR tasks autonomously. Learn more about Whisk at whisk.com. Welcome to The Human Element, where we explore how AI and human insight are reshaping the future of HR. Today, I'm joined by Jarlath Doherty, a seasoned HR executive known for leading global talent and people operations at some of the world's most recognized technology companies, including Squarespace, Calibra, LinkedIn, and Yahoo. With a background that spans computing, hospitality, and human capital management, Jarlath brings a rare blend of analytical and human-centered thinking to how organizations evolve. Today, we will explore how AI is reshaping HR from operations to ethics and how leaders can use it to elevate, not replace, the human element at work. So thank you for joining me today, Jarlath. It is so good to see you.
Thank you. And thank you for having me as well. So looking forward to it.
I know it's been a bit. Jarlath and I worked together at Yahoo a decade or more ago, which is actually, I cannot believe it. Does not feel like that long, but I'm excited to chat today.
Yeah, glad to be here. Glad to get going.
Yeah, awesome. So you've seen HR evolve across multiple eras of technology, from digitization to data and now on to AI. When you look at this current wave of AI, what feels truly transformational to you about that?
Yeah, it is transformational. I think AI isn't just about changing how people work anymore. It's really changing how businesses are run from the ground up. I think sort of true transformation will always require re-architecting of systems, roles, and really it's going to be a lot of bottoms up work, I think, to incorporate the innovation that's coming at us. And when you think about the business and how it's reacting, then obviously that means we're going to deal with significant transformation on the HR side of the house as well. And I think most significant, as you mentioned, since the whole digitization of employee records, what we're learning and the speed that we're running at here is that AI isn't just about automating tasks. It's really fundamentally redefining how work gets done in HR as well. And so It's quite an exciting time, but there's a lot to take under consideration when you think about the HR function and how we're going to respond to it as well.
Yeah, it's funny to think about. Digitization doesn't feel that long ago. There's probably actually still somebody in a closet full of paper records somewhere. We should go get them and bring them to the AI era, I think.
I think we all closet somewhere that we have a lot of paper records and that we're still using. I think that's going to be part of the challenge when we think about the foundations that we need to really make AI work for us as well. I think we're all going to have to deal with that. Poor data, siloed data, documents that are out of date. I think all of those things are going to have to be really looked at as we think about loading models and data to be able to actually capitalize on the world that we're walking into.
100%, like not being able to get away with information living in people's heads either, because you have to put the information somewhere in order to make use of AI. So Jarlath, your background is a very unique mix, which I love in an HR person. Mine is as well. You've spanned computing, technology, and people leadership. How has that shaped your approach to building effective organizations, specific as you think about the AI era?
Yeah, I'm a little bit of a different breed, maybe, of a CHRO, in that I started my career back when, we won't age ourselves and put a number to that, but I started as a junior engineer many moons ago, actually working with data on products called CBeyond and Tidco. Now I am aging myself, but they were big data transformation middleware systems, if that makes sense. So having started there and seeing where we are now back in this world of data models, data cleanliness, it's obviously quite exciting for me. Prior to working at Squarespace, worked at a company called Calibra for 7 years as their chief people officer. They are a data intelligence and a data governance company. So there's a theme here through my career in terms of that tech background and data. as well. And I think for me, it's quite an exciting time as IT, if you like, and HR really start to come together under the banner of AI and being able to sort of re-architect the HR operating model, the HR service delivery model with a very different perspective, given the tooling that's out there right now, to really deliver for our employees in a way that we've always talked about employee experience and we've always talked about business process, but we're now finding ourselves walking into a world where it is all coming together so rapidly with a view to making things easier for our business ultimately and our employees as well. So it is quite exciting. It can be incredibly daunting. I think just because of my tech background, I have a little bit more ease maybe in walking into some of these conversations and speaking the language maybe of the vendors that are coming up and the data that's coming up. But I think overall, most people, organizations have come a long way in the last 10 years. You mentioned everybody's invested, I think, heavily in people analytics of some description. So having that foundation is a really critical component, I think, of AI enablement and getting the best from AI. I think over the last 5 years, we've seen a massive digital transformation of all things in HR. So really needing to be able to work remotely, we've had to make a lot of systems investments across the enterprise, if that makes sense. So we have a lot of data there that we have yet to harness, if you like. And I think that's going to become an integral part of delivering services to our employees as well. It'll all become part of the same data model, the same data footprint that we'll have to do. So it's very exciting, but very daunting. And it's when you think about where to start, I think that's where a lot of people are challenged right now in terms of where do you go with all of this and how do you pick the right place to start from all the use cases that are available to us as well.
100%. So let's talk about that, the rise of the AI-powered people function. It sounds like a movie when I say it like that, but how are organizations restructuring HR to include either new AI-enabled roles, so things like experienced designers evolving, or roles like AI operations specialist, which is one we've seen out there? How do you think the teams themselves are thinking about restructuring?
Yeah, I think to understand where we're going, you really need to understand where we're coming from. And I think and acknowledge where we are. And I think that's going to be very different for different organizations. The size that you're at, the scale that you're at, you know, how much technology adoption you have across your HR service delivery model today, what your HR tech stack looks like. I think traditionally, the HR structure has been built for a different area. And when I say structure, I'm talking about the shared services, the HR VPs, and then all of your COEs, if you like. What we're starting to find is that model is very much breaking as we start to look at the use of agents or agentic AI through workflows rather than specific roles in that model as well. And that's where things are starting to break. And certainly with my own experience over the last 12 months, as we were thinking about all of the tooling that was coming out and how we could use it, we very quickly realized that while we don't have a great sort of product mindset, if you like, the HR team, and so how are we going to figure that out? And how are we going to tackle this, if that makes sense? And do we have the right skills inside there as well? The model overall, the way the world is working, our employees expect the same experience in the organization that they get when they go to an Amazon or a Netflix. It's a personalized experience. It's a seamless experience. You can check out at the end of it, and they can get it at any time of the day. And that's very new. If you think about the world in which we lived in, I remember many years ago talking about 24/7 support and needing to have a team in APAC and a team in Europe and having a team in the US so that you could cover. We wanted to be able to answer all of your employee queries at any time.
Around the sun, right? Around the sun.
All of the sun. We're going to be able to answer these things. Just think about the opportunity we have right now by having that agentic approach or that generative approach to being able to deal with those queries as and when they come in. And I was talking to somebody on Tuesday, actually different company, and it was a different topic. And they were like, yeah, you know what? They were on a maternity leave and they were up at 2:00 in the morning. They're like, I had a question. And they have been obviously making some investments in agentic AI. And they were like, I was able to get everything that I needed from 2:00 in the morning from the infrastructure and work. And I was like, what were you doing up at 2:00 in the morning? The answer was, I sleep when the baby sleeps and I'm awake when I get an opportunity. And I had my list of things to do. So that sort of experience for our employees is something that we are really going to have to contend with and now deliver, given the tooling is maturing and heading towards that, I would say, world in which it's all on all the time, available anytime as well.
even if it's not 2 a.m., right? I think probably I would think your teams would think this as well, how often HR teams get bombarded at the end of the business day when leaders leave meetings, right? It's like your leaders don't necessarily need you in the middle of the flow of work. They end their day and then on come the HR questions. So that always on and accessible piece is huge in terms of how we deliver service to our clients, right, in the business. I think it's going to be amazing.
Yeah, and I think that we, to a large extent, we all have some sort of CRM, do you know what I mean, or ticketing system that we've been using, and we've injected some sort of knowledge base in there, and that sort of is able to serve up content. It's, again, we have a great head start when we think about how we take that now and load it into a model that can provide the support that we're talking about as well. And I think that's where the roles are changing for the HR operating model in designing that as well. So you mentioned the employee experience designer. Again, employee experience is not new for us in the world of HR, but actually the concept of being a product manager or a UX designer, that's where I think we're evolving very quickly to, with a role of sort of employee experience designer type inside there as well. That role really borrows from sort of product management and UX principles. They treat our employees, we should be looking at them as users, and we should be thinking about designing their journeys, their workflows through their days, the moment that matters. And if we can adopt some of that thinking to drive requirements out that we can then go and look at the tooling that's available to us, I think that's where the real win is starting to hit, if that makes sense, with the HR teams in terms of how they stack those use cases and ultimately how they deliver that value to the business as well. I think when you think about the product-led thinking, that design thinking that we need to bring into the HR team, there is then, you mentioned the HR ops specialists, these AIs, which they're more the engineers, if you like. When you think about the role that they've been playing, they know where every document, policy, they've been answering every question. And really the evolution of that role is they're the people who are going to implement it. They're going to configure these systems. They're going to optimize them. They're going to work to make sure that they are actually doing the right, responding in the right way. They're giving the right answers inside there as well. So I think those principles of the engineer and that AI specialist role in operations, but also then the employee experience designer, are going to be critical skills that we need to embrace as a people organization, as a HR team, and make sure that we're building around that as well. We're going to have to load these models. We're going to have to manage these models. We're going to have to make sure that it's up to date. We're going to have to define the workflows that we want to automate. And the really terrible world, we're going to have to govern all of that to make sure that it's accurate and that it is delivering the right content so that we can deliver the right value and the right services. And again, I think we're very well positioned to that. If I go back to the investments that we've made in people analytics and the data scientists, many of them, we have those in our organizations right now. They've built out really robust data warehouses or data lakes at this point in time with a lot of information from different parts of your HR stack, because not everybody is on the same core HR system. It gives us a massive step forward in terms of defining what the data model needs to be as we think about loading that then for use in multiple places across the AI ecosystem that we're finding ourselves in right now as well. So many of us are not starting from zero. And I think the work that we've done too now will serve us well in terms of taking that next leap into the future of the HR operating model. Short term, I've seen my own experience as being, we don't have the product capability. We've partnered with our product teams internally to bring some training into the people team and the HR team. We developed cross-functional pods within our own team. So in the absence of having that sort of product-led product mindset, we said, okay, who do we think looks like the best product manager here right now? Who's closest to this? And interestingly enough, we put together maybe 6 to 10 projects with a pod around it, which was made up of somebody from talent management and learning and a HRBP and a generalist and somebody from ops and somebody from HR tech. In one pod, we had a data scientist for our people analytics team, and another pod looking at all of these use cases. And very quickly, what we learned was the people that we thought were the product managers were in fact not the product managers that were the best placed for that project as well. And that was a real eye-opener for me in terms of the roles really starting to meld together, if that makes sense, and that need to re-architect jobs as you think about what the impact of any one of those use cases in AI is going to bring to the operating model in there as well. So the cross-functional pods were eye-opening for us. I think that we put together an AI governance board internally as well. So we had a cross section of our HR, our legal, our IT team, our trust and safety team as well, who's been doing this for quite some time with our customers as well, and helping us keep on track of the use cases and what would that do if we were feeding it into models inside there. So in the absence of being fully educated today about what the impact of some of these decisions were, pulling those cross-functional teams together and getting them working together around making sure that legal security have oversight into sort of what we're doing and the tools that we're deploying, where we're putting data. That was a big part, I think, of us experimenting in the last 12 months of how are we going to tackle this and how are we going to shape ourselves around the outside of it. But ultimately, the other thing that we did wasn't just the product mindset, but it was the agile mindset, the scrum mindset into how we're going to build these things. And gone are the days where you need 18 months to do a full system deployment. You are rapid prototyping in these tools. You are MVPing, you are getting it out the gates, you're getting all hands on it, you know what I mean, as fast as you can. And you are quickly accelerating the build on the other side of that as well. And so
you love that, don't you? I love listening to you say that, but I worked with you for a bit and you love that, don't you?
You can tell straight away where I'm just coming into my own a little bit when it comes to the overlap with the tech and the HR side of the house. And I do. It's probably for all of us something that we have to go back on and look at the foundation, I think, of where we are. And you need to be super realistic about where your tech stack is, where your data quality is, where your data is sitting right now. And that's going to be, I think, a massive foundation that will either make you incredibly successful here or it will not. Traditionally, when you talk to organizations, there are teams and they'll say, well, the HR data is not the cleanest, you know what I mean? It's never kept where it needs to be. And so governance around that data, I think, is going to be a big thing for all of us going forward as well.
So interestingly, I think you gave 2 precursor items, right, for those leaders who are stuck in where do I start? If you have not cracked the code on how to bring together data from disparate systems, that is definitely something that ideally you started really getting on yesterday, but like getting that in place, as you've said, but also quickly instilling that product mindset in your team, like user-centered design and figuring that out as just baseline skills, right? That you're going to bump into those as problematic in rolling out AI solutions if you haven't established those 2 things in your team. So one thing, Jarlath, that I have really admired about you is that you are very business focused. And I've heard you talk about creating effective organizations that drive business outcomes, which, yes, like plus 100 to that. What do you think that means in an AI-enabled world?
Yeah, I just think we have been handed an opportunity to accelerate how we deliver outcomes in the new world that we're going into right now as well. I just think there's so much opportunity to really focus on the more mundane tasks, the administrative tasks, if that makes sense. And because the use cases and the success cases are already in our ecosystems right now. You've had a couple of people prior, Barb, on the show that have been able to say, look, we were able to cut our first response time down without anybody touching any of this by 80%, 60%, 50%. These are big numbers, you know what I mean? And when you think about larger organizations, if you could automate 40% of the operational workload that you're doing across your organization, because we all know a HRBP sometimes has operational work, as a generalist has operational work. Nobody's immune from the operational work, but if you can get this right, you're literally doubling the capacity that you have in the team. You know what I mean? To actually start to porpoise up. And that capacity is going to be needed on some of the things that we talked about, which is the foundational elements of getting these programs or the portfolio of products up and running inside there as well. So that's where I think the real business value is that can be created right now as well. I think, what AI will give us is the ability to query data, to query policy, to query content, to query our values. We can put a lot of our leadership behaviors in there as well. The very sort of mechanics, if you like, of the culture blueprint of an organization. And it will do a great job of regurgitating and helping people reason and think and decide around things that they want to do inside there. What it cannot do is the creative human side of everything that we need to do. Do you know what I mean? And what you don't want to do is lose that empathy, the judgment that's still got to be needed by human interaction and many of the things. And that's where I think that we can focus our time. That's where I think the value comes from, is not just building those workflows and making sure that you're getting rid of the work, but that you're also interjected into the work at the right time, in the right way, when those judgment calls are needed, or when those empathetic or seeking to understand conversations need to happen a whole lot more around an issue, because it's not just something that can be decided by a policy document that's inside there as well. I think that's the purposing up piece. And I think everybody's going to have a role to play in that, regardless of where you sit in the organization today as well.
100%. Becomes a touchy subject, right? When we start talking about AI, because where people's heads go first is, 80% savings of time. Oh, that means reduced teams. And what you're saying is, yes, it creates efficiency, but there are these higher value creative tasks that people can get to that they maybe were not getting to in the right ways or the best ways before. And what does that sort of unlock? Is there anything in that domain, like that more strategic, more human work, that you're really excited to get your teams to have some time to focus on?
Absolutely. There's no algorithm or decision engine or AI tool right now that can coach a struggling employee on an issue that they're having right now, or can coach a manager on a sensitive ER case or a workplace conflict issue, or design a culture that's going to inspire everybody. There's just so many things that can't be done. And if you can give more of that back to the business for those moments where they need that, and also architect around the outside, that's where the true value is going to come from here, I think, is making sure that the emotional intelligence, the contextual understanding, the human connection is still provided to employees and managers in all of these moments that matters through that, while taking away that sort of heavy lifting, if you like, there. And I think any of us in the HR world, I think those that will thrive will be those that embraced all things AI as a tool that makes us more effective, and we don't see it as a threat to our existence. That's, I think, sort of how I would characterize it as well. It is time to embrace, and it is time to build, and it's time to build a new future for ourselves too.
Totally. I've been saying to people, move from threat to opportunity. And if you flip it to opportunity, think of it as an opportunity. What will you have the opportunity to do next if you don't have to do this thing that you, by the way, don't want to be doing 100 times a month anyways, repetitively? So I, Jarlath, can't have someone with your background on the show and not ask at least one more question about data before we move on to the last part of the show. But
I could go for a whole 2 hours. 2 days on this one. Yeah.
I know. But I actually think it's so important, right? Because we talked about being data ready, right? And if folks don't have their data ready, it becomes challenging to implement some of the AI solutions that are out there today. What are some early warning signs that an HR leader might want to look for to flag, basically, that they maybe aren't yet data ready for AI?
Yeah, I think there's a few things. One is, do you have a data warehouse or data lake, if that makes sense? Are you producing a aggregated set of, let's just call them reports or dashboards for leaders right now, where you're, more often than not, we have a separate recruiting system to our core HR system, to maybe our performance management system or our comp system inside there. Have you undertaken that work already? Is it sitting somewhere, you know what I mean, where it's had to go through some sort of cleansing process or some sort of data quality or data lineage process? And how comfortable are you with that? What's the feedback on it? What would you, if you had to score yourself from a data quality perspective, how would you rank? Because that, I think, is the foundational piece inside there. That, again, we're a bit of a step ahead here because we've invested so heavily in people analytics. So your people analytics partner, your data scientist, is only as good as the data is clean. And you will only be as good as the data is clean as well. And I think there's a phrase that I could use, which I won't. I'll call it garbage in, garbage out. There's another phrase that we could use for that, but we're on a HR podcast right now. I've heard that other phrase used quite a lot.
I have as well.
And I think that the foundation has to be addressed. And many organizations, I think, are finding now, as did we were like, oh my God, we can experiment, which we've done. We long listed 70 tools. We brought that down to 20 tools. We took that down to 10, and we started running at pilots on 10 tools inside there, all of which needed either extensive amounts of data or similar data footprints to what we had. And we felt really good about our data. Do you know what I mean? We had invested a lot in consolidating our HR tech stack, so it was all in one place. We knew that the audits were in place around the outside of it. But lo and behold, you start to find things like, yeah, we actually only launched Workday 2.5 years ago, and there was 2 other systems in the building before that, and none of that data is now in our data model. Do we want to go back and do something with that again? And it's really as you start going through and using the tool and looking at the data models and actually putting your hands on them and seeing how they work, all of these things start to pop up inside there as well. How many of us have intranets or Jira sites where you have 10 versions of a policy? That the old 9 were never deprecated. You do a search in your toolbar, you get 6 different versions of the same thing coming up. So that the quality and the governance is not just about the data in the systems and how siloed or inconsistent that is. It's also about your policy documents, your handbook documents, the content that you have on your intranet or your Jira sites or whatever it is that you're using. All of that plays a role. And if that is not where it needs to be, then you are missing a foundational step. And this is where I think a lot of companies have, great, we have a solution over here, and then they've loaded it in and they've had all sorts of hallucinations or false insights that are going on in these tools. And no insight is better than something being wrong fundamentally in the guidance that you're giving through some sort of, whether it be to managers or to employees inside there as well. So I just can't impress enough. That step is a foundational piece for all of us. And that's where our investment needs to go. And we can all say that we've done it. I just went through this process and we found many things that we were not expecting to find, which meant we really need to get our arms around it. And we really need to focus on it as that, again, foundational piece to making things work.
We should give listeners a little test to go do. Even the ones who think they've totally got it handled and you've got knowledge management, document management, and controls in place, especially if you've ever done an acquisition even. Go pick a policy, any policy, go search your intranet, and let us know in the comments if you're in a place where you only find one of that policy. And congratulations to you, right? But if you're in an acquisitive company, like you end up with like legacy intranets from other companies. And if you don't have a practice to go scrub all of those. So it's just really thinking about your practices in that space. It's so smart. And they're foundations that, theoretically we should have had in place. And often we have them at least partially in place, but it matters so much more because once you layer AI on top of that, the speed at which those answers are being given, whether you're feeding it right information or incorrect information, is astronomically different than what was happening when people were having to self-serve. So let me move us into, I could literally talk for another hour about all of this stuff. It's the exact things, right, that are going on within our teams today. But I'm going to move us to a little speed round that we wrap up with. So what is one AI use case that every HR leader should pilot this year?
It is absolutely the tier 1 frontline employee support. What maybe we call the chatbot or your ticketing service. I think that's where everybody should be experimenting in right now. And I think that stretches. It's quite interesting because for different organizations, that could stretch into the HR generalist role a little bit. It could stretch into the HR BP role. Depends on how your model's set up and where you've drawn the line on how employees engage with your operations team versus how they engage with a generalist versus how they engage with a people partner. But that area is absolutely one area that I think everybody should be looking at right now. It's where I think we're going to get initially the most uplift. I think another area, sorry, I'm going to give you 2. You asked for one.
Do it.
I think is around the people analytics space as well, and just being able to get that data into a data model and start triaging it. You know what I mean? I think is going to be critically important. I think for many of us, that's actually more ready than we would think it is right now, particularly if you have the data lake or the data warehouse in place. So that is one I'd go after as well very quickly. And then there's a lot of recruiting use cases that are really, they're just flying right now, just in terms of the recruiting AI specialists that are coming in there. That's a big area I think that you should look at as well. And you're going to have to get out and play with some of these tools to really understand where they're going to impact inside there as well. And they are evolving so rapidly. With the more customers they're bringing on, the better the capabilities getting, the better the models are getting. So I think experimenting as well is going to be really important based on where your business is and what your business is asking from the people team as well.
100%. Pick a place and get started. You cannot wait it out to figure out what your tech stack of 5 years from now is going to look like. That is like not a thing anymore. Got to hop to it. So what do you think, Jarlath, is the most underrated skill for HR leaders in an AI era?
Most underrated skill for HR leader? I think that it's around the data and the quality of the data as well. I think that's the piece where we haven't had to pay a lot. You had a data scientist, you know what I mean, or you have your people analytics people inside there. I think that data fluency in the world that we're walking into on every member of your people organization is going to be a critical part of you being able to leverage and really bring that value proposition as well. I think the rigor required around auditing of everything, governance, I think that's a massive skill that we're going to have to, it's a capability that we're going to have to build very quickly. And also I'd say, how do you, when you're thinking about adopting these product and engineering principles, whether the sort of product-led design or the user stories and agile and scrum into your people team as well, you're thinking about those themes and maybe leaning on your product department or your engineering department to do that as well. How do you actually take your current service delivery model and productize it as well? And so if you took your scope of services and everything that you're doing, which for many of us will be similar but not the same and done by different teams, how do you actually define product taxonomy on that? And then how do you target the workflows or the areas that you're going to start building products on inside there? And for many of us, when we think about our workday system, we've many times struggled with mapping employees to the product that they're working on so that we can do effective resource planning or mapping it into. And what I think is going to be really important is that we take that concept of a product taxonomy and apply it to the HR service delivery model now to start really identifying those use cases. And I think it's not a skill it's not even underrated because it's not a skill we've had to do before, but the faster you can get into defining the services as products, the faster you'll get to those use cases as well. So I think not underrated, but something we're all going to have to pivot into as well.
100%. What is, and this is the last question, what is one AI tool that you personally cannot live without?
Yeah, I'm really enjoying Claude.
Okay.
I'm a big user. I've got 3 running, do you know what I mean? So I'm always checking one off against the other. I'm like, what am I getting from one or the other? But I'm really leaning into the Claude side of the house, I would say, quickly followed by ChatGPT. Those are the 2 that I think that's inside there. But Claude, I think over the last 3-4 months, that's been the one that's my go-to right now and it's changed the way that I work. It's changed the way that I do everything. I'm sure everybody's finding this right now. When you get up in the morning, when you hit various things that you need to do during the day and you get to the evening, it is just amazing how quickly we're adapting to the platforms, and Claude has been my go-to and probably will be for the next bit as well.
Excellent. So let me try and bring us home here. It was nearly impossible to get to only 3 key takeaways. I'm sure listeners are going to get more than just these 3, but I think one thing that I'm taking away is the product mindset, right? Your concept around the building of cross-functional pods, but like getting your team into a motion where they are user-centered in their thinking and are designing the right solution to deliver to the business. And that's one big one. And we spent a bunch of time talking talking about that. The second I noted as data ready, with a footnote that remembering, and this ties to what you talked about with like knowledge management and document management, and that in an AI era, information in the form of words is literally data. It is broken down into zeros and ones, and that is how AI works. And so having that data organized and that having fluency within your team on the data side of things, which includes how information is structured in addition to things that sit as numbers in your systems, really important. And then the last was something that we started with right at the beginning, was on demand, right? The unlock that is going to happen with AI being available when people need it and when people have a question, when leaders have a question and can answer with a level of speed, that is just going to create a great unlock in our business. So those are the three, and I'll let you take us home completely with one last piece of advice for HR leaders who are maybe just starting out on their AI journey.
Yeah, the value prop, I think, of AI is going to be giving us the gift of time to go and focus on the other things that we need to go and do, I think, as professionals, whether that be advisory, more of the strategic, higher touch support for our businesses as well, but also that architecture work that needs to be done. I can't emphasize that the most. I think from everybody that I've talked to, from my own experience, do the hard work now. So I'm going to hammer one more point home. Clean your data. And by data, I'll reiterate what you said, Barb. It is data, it is policy, it is a document, it is everything that is currently in use that employees and managers have access to, that they use or seek or search for. Do the hard work now. Establish the governance, build the foundation. Your future AI-powered HR function will thank you. And you do not need to wait to start that journey right now. If you know there are problems, get them fixed, because every one of these tools, regardless of where you go, is going to have to require that, you know what I mean, to be able to deliver on that value proposition. So don't wait, don't hold back.
Yes, your future HR function will thank you. And thank you, Jarlath, for coming on and sharing such a wealth of information with our listeners. It was great to see you. And thanks for coming on today.
Thank you. And I look forward to seeing the future episodes as well.
Awesome. Thanks. Thank you for joining us on The Human Element, presented by Whisk. If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to follow The Human Element wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Barb Biden. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.